everyone, and congratulations to the organizers for this amazing event. So yes, we're going to talk about the primary sector during this discussion. The Mediterranean diet is based on a thriving ecosystem that is made of a moderate climate and predictable weather conditions that produce all these wonderful, healthy, high-quality, nutritious ingredients that are the Mediterranean diet, this gastronomic treasure that is actually healthy for humans and the planet. However, the Mediterranean region today is particularly vulnerable to the climate crisis as one of the regions in the world mostly affected and hit by extreme weather phenomena, desertification, scarcity of natural resources. Actually, according to the soil deal by the European Union, 60 to 70% of all land in Europe is degraded due to poor farming practices, pollution, and urbanization. So all these conditions, combined with depopulation of rural areas, the lack of generational renewal in farming communities, and the fact that we all feel this threat towards the livelihood of people living in those rural areas, all these pose a threat also to the existence of the Mediterranean diet. So we're going to discuss a few things about how we are tackling these issues and how we can create a more positive and a more optimistic outlook for the future in the region. So I will start by asking Ellen, who has been one of the authors of the Eat Lancet Commission study. And may I remind everyone that this was a major step towards defining what a healthy diet looks like. A healthy diet not only for humans, but also for the natural environment and the planet. So we got some very interesting results from that study. So according to your understanding, what is the current state of food systems impact on the environment globally? And what do you envision for the future? And if we can start with the presentation, please.
Yes, so although the focus here is on the Mediterranean, I'll start with a global picture. So in the Eat Lancet Commission, we assess the global situation of the current food system and also projections for different transformation pathways, different scenarios for the future. But what we did find is that food and food systems is the major cause for breaching the planetary boundaries or the boundaries for the Earth system processes that maintain the current situation. So there's this planetary boundary framework which we, like within which, where we should live to enable a safe place for humans to live. And the food is one of the major causes for breaching those boundaries, which includes land use and biodiversity loss, and that's particularly from extensive monoculture, water use, which is then particularly a local problem, so it can be more extreme in some areas than others, nitrogen and phosphorus loss, meaning overuse of fertilizers, and the novel entities, which is a bit more kind of new assessment, but in relation to agriculture, the use of or overuse of pesticides and antimicrobials. And then, of course, greenhouse gas emissions, as we all know, like 30% is from food systems, and in there, a third from agriculture, and a third from land use change, and a third from the post-harvest processes. So that's the situation we have today. And what we did look at in the commission is like, so where does this take us? So we see that, you know, on a business as usual prediction, with a growing population, we will just continue to increase and increase and increase until we reach, you know, certain tipping points where we don't know what's going to happen. But we did model dietary shifts, improved production practices, so both increased productivity, but also more sustainable practices, and then food loss and waste, or reducing the food loss and waste. And we did find that shifting diets to the planetary health diet, which is very much aligned with the Mediterranean diet, has the largest impacts. So it's very impactful to shift diets to reduce the environmental impacts of the food system. But obviously also shifting to sustainable ecological intensification or sustainable practices together with reduced food loss and waste will have a larger impact, so all three of them together. And what we see is that even if we do all these measures, we're shifting diets, shifting to sustainable practices, halving the food loss and waste, all three together, we can just maybe come within the boundaries again. So it's really critical. The food system needs to change for us to keep the planet as we know it today.
Thank you. I'm happy that I'm here because it's a conference which is not scientific, so I don't really have to speak with figures, graphs, but I have one photo. Maybe it's easy to have it. Yeah, I mean, I will take it from where Ellen has left it. I mean, we're in the Mediterranean, and we are right now in the front line of the climate crisis and other crises plus. I mean, they are very turbulent times. I mean, we see it. I choose this photo because it was taken last year from Crete. It shows, it's very alarming because it's an alarm for a farmer, but also agronomist, maybe for everybody. Because what we see is, it's obvious, yes, it's a dried olive tree, which should not be there. I mean, it should not be in such condition, because we talk about the Koroneiki variety, supposed to be resistant to drought, heat, but yet it was not tolerant to the upcoming conditions of climate change. I mean, we see many different aspects of this crisis coming. I mean, change in rain patterns. Of course, we have very poor soils. Soil deal already announced it, the Joint Research Center of European Union already announced it. We are in more severe conditions. But then let's go again a little bit globally. I mean, besides the, let's call it agricultural, environmental aspects, we have also this turbulence, conflict in the area. I mean, last week I was in a conference in Sweden, and I was surprised, also alarmed to see that some colleagues from Sweden announcing that the Swedish government had set up, it's called the Food Defense Center. It was very nice. I mean, they also had a fork and spoon, like weapons, and the root beer. It was all about food sovereignty. I mean, the things are changing. I mean, it's not like business as usual, both in terms of production, but also in other aspects. So, I mean, also yesterday I had another email from some Italian colleagues sharing initiative to monitor and prevent the destruction of olive trees in the West Bank of Palestine. I mean, we have some illegal settlers, etc. So, you see, it's not so simple. Usually, when I'm in such presentations and talking about this introductory part, the bad conditions that are actually here, that it's not something in the future to be projected, it's actually here. Many people get desperate. Yes, they say, all right, it's a bad condition. Do we have to abandon the ship? No. It's about, it's time of change. I mean, we really need a paradigm shift. I mean, it's about transforming our food system. So this is what all these photos of the situation, also the very interesting graph of the Eat Lancet tells us. Another path to follow, yes?
It's a great point that you made. Food is becoming something that we realized after the Second World War is an element of power, control, and national security, actually.
Okay, good morning to everybody. I'm Alkis Alexandrou. I'm the General Manager of Agri-Banking in Piraeus Bank. I've decided to make up with that slide to you, which can give you a different opinion about the banks in the agri-food sector. We as bankers use a rather dull, undistinguished language with a glossary like derivatives and structured finance, foreign exchange, and issues that are very far away from what happens on the ground. In our field of interest, which is the agri-food, I've put down the 5 largest agri-banks in Europe: Crédit Agricole in Sao Paulo, Agrobank is a CaixaBank, is a Spanish bank, Rabobank and ourselves. I've given you some figures in terms of how much is the value of property we manage in each and every country. It's a huge value of assets that we have to take the best use of, and best use of means what exactly are the needs of our clients, what are the needs of our farmers, of our agri-cooperatives, and of the small SME who try to find themselves in the food industry. You can identify some keywords in all banks which are different than the ones that I've said previously. For example, in Crédit Agricole, there is keywords like soil health, biodiversity, water animal welfare, and circular economy. In Intesa Sao Paulo, precision farming, climate resilience, agri-tech M&A advisory. In Agrobank, digitalization, AI-powered soil analysis. In Rabobank, carbon farming, startups link sustainable data with financing with food and agri. You can certainly understand that what caters more for our banks nowadays is how we can bring value into our clientele. In our bank, I've put some keywords which I'll have the opportunity to explore further, like the Center of Excellence, which I'll explain down the road. The AgriFlex EG is a product that we provide in our clients, where effectively, when something turns upside down and there are disasters, natural disasters, we have pre-agreed, pre-arranged to extend their loans without even coming into the bank. Contractual farming is another example where we put together the farmers and the processors, so the bank stands in between and discuss with the farmers themselves and the off-takers, i.e. the companies who buy the natural resources that they produce. ESG in practice, and certainly we utilize all the national and European programs so as to bring liquidity into the market. So Effie, the situation has changed in our industry, and we keep on focusing into the future rather than looking into the past. Thanks so much.
Yes, it is amazing what kind of needs have emerged and how all the financial instruments have shifted, actually, towards mitigating climate crisis and preparing for the future. And I think this is critical for the financial institutions, the state, and also the farmers themselves, that they need to understand how they can protect their farm businesses, their livelihoods, and the future of food production. So I understand from this first round of answers that we are at a tipping point. So I would like to ask you to share, from your perspectives, what are the critical factors that we have to put in place for future-proofing agricultural production and the future of the Mediterranean diet. So we'll start with you, Vasilis. You are on the ground, you're a researcher, you're working with farming techniques. What can research and science contribute so that we can go towards farming practices that mitigate climate crisis, they create climate resilient systems and produce nutritious food?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we, of course, researchers with other colleagues from other countries, especially in the Mediterranean, we discuss about it. I mean, what is our role here? I mean, we're researchers. Do we have solutions? Yes, we can work on this. But mostly we're giving messages. We're not the decision makers. But we can provide the solution. So it is increasingly clear with all this, let's say, new science generated the last years in the so-called sustainable agriculture, let's call it, yes, where we see that, as I said before, we need a change, a transformation of example, how we should do that. We also have a change of perception. I mean, we don't see just the field. I mean, how to make more better, more sustainable the farm, for example. Nowadays, I mean, it's better way to have a socio-ecological aspect, point of view, to understand that it's not to do everything right up to the farm gate and then it's over. I mean, consumption, waste, material, whatever, it's much more integrated. So we're talking about, we have keywords. We talk about resilience, of course, which is the end point. Sustainability, yes, a word that's been mistreated and used so much last time. So we talk about transformations through a so-called agroecological transition, going from just efficiency and productivity as main targets to sustaining first all these resources that we have to use. I mean,
different KPIs, I understand.
Yes, I mean, we should really change the way we look at the, let's say, the farm level, the primary production. I mean, productivity should be the result of a sustainable food system. It shouldn't be the end, it shouldn't be the main target. So we talk about, as I said, focusing on several aspects, soil, biodiversity, so many tools that can really give us the assets to move forward towards this direction, which I can share with you later, of course, with real examples.
Fantastic. And Ellen, on your perspective, what about the people that are involved, the farming communities who are affected by all this situation? How can we support them and secure livelihood for those communities?
Yeah, thank you. So, as I mentioned initially, so dietary change is a very strong lever to reduce environmental impacts globally. But that also means, I mean, shifting diets means shifting production. So we will see then that you need to shift sectors maybe. So if we are globally to reduce meat intake, obviously the meat sectors need to reduce. And those that are currently employed in meat production might need to change the sector that they work in. Because we also see that this shift, the dietary shift that we are recommending, like, again, on a global scale, it requires a lot of more vegetables, nuts, legumes, fruits. So those sectors would then increase. So, but then the farmers might need support in, transitioning from being a meat producer to being a crop producer, a vegetable or a legume producer. And that's where I think we really need to see monetary investments and practical support to support the transition for people moving from one sector to another. Because we do see globally, even with the projected population growth, but at the same time, improved productivity, both in a business as usual scenario and in our more sustainable scenarios. We see that you have more or less the same number of people employed in agriculture, but we do see a shift if we are to shift our diets. So yeah, so that's where we're calling on financial institutions or governments to support that transition for smallholder farmers or for farming cooperatives, to education, to investment in new farming tools, and Yeah, that's how we can secure livelihoods, I believe, in the future.
So we're talking about reskilling or
Yes.
upskilling, farming communities, investing in younger generations who are more keen in introducing new things and trying out new things. That's I think, critical at this point. Alkis, coming back to you again. So you have a focus on this socio-economic structure of rural communities. So according to your understanding as a financial institution, what will be the single most important element that will influence this transition towards a more sustainable farming model?
Okay, good. Effie, it's a very demanding question who hasn't got only one answer. But I would be saying that the key word I'd like to explain in the next 2 or 3 minutes is the word processing. Processing is the type of activity which gives extra value into the primary sector produced goods. You can find in my presentation 4 columns. The first is the food produced on the primary sector. It's agriculture itself. The second column is the food and beverage processing. It's all the processing technique that's being used in our field of interest. Then it is the wholesaling and retailing, effectively are the supermarkets and the selling points of the produced or non-processed or non-processed products. And the final one are the serving activities, restaurants, HoReCa, and the catering. 2 issues. The first is the number of holdings in the first row. You can identify that there are a lot of holdings into the agriculture. So there are very many people, families, enterprises, small enterprises who are caring about their future. And the other companies that are involved are less, but more stronger viably, as you can certainly understand. And the third row is the value of output. Effectively, let's call it sales, like sales. So on an annual basis, the agriculture industry, those are data from the Eurostat, produces something like a value of 10 billion euros. So that 10 billion euros are transcended into the next rounds of the economy. The companies that process the products that are produced by the farmers gain a value of 21 billion euros. So this is the extra value being taken by processing the foods themselves. The wholesalers and the retailers, they take some of the products of the agriculture sector and they sell it into the consumer for a value of 10 billion euros. And certainly part of those food ingredients are being offered into the restaurants and produce another 12 billion euros. So what I'd like to pinpoint is that we have to share some of that value into the agriculture if possible. And because that cannot be that easy, what we have to take care of is to increase the value of the first column. And this is part of our job. This is part of what we are doing daily in Piraeus. We do communicate with our clients. We discuss a lot. We hear them, and we try to find solutions which are meaningful for them and for the bank, because no solution is viable for the bank unless it's the best for our clients. Thank you very much.
I think you made a really important point about the value-adding element of food processing and all the need we have to create more value in the farms by introducing technology, making farmers sustainable, decreasing the use of inputs and energy costs, water, fertilizers and all of that. And I think this is quite well combined with the agroecology and the need for reskilling younger generations. So, yes.
May I
Yeah,
just
of course, Ellen.
add an additional comment? Because obviously it's very important this, the economic side and the environment side, but also I guess your question, I could have, gone a bit further also into, remembering that this is people involved. So the numbers we see here in agriculture, all the, the holdings enterprises in agriculture, the employment in agriculture, these are people that also need to have their rights respected, to have a decent working conditions. And we do see that globally, there are, a third of the global population are unable to afford a healthy diet. And people that are employed in the food sector are highly represented in that group. So the people that produce the food that we all need to eat are the ones that are often worse off and can't afford to buy the same healthy food in the other end. And not just employed in agriculture, but also employed in these other sectors, kind of the ones that are serving the food, or the ones that are lower down in the food system sector. So also remembering that both today and in the future, we need to make sure that there are decent working conditions for the food system workers, that we all have a living wage according, like relevant in the country we're living, that we have, freedom or the rights to join labor unions, that there are collective bargaining opportunities, and also with this corporate control, which I also think you can kind of see from these numbers, how we need to make sure that for the small holder farmer, or for the everyday worker, that we don't get too much concentrated power within the food system. So those are important elements to remember, I think, in this picture.
Fantastic contribution, Ellen. Thank you very much. And you just reminded me of a recent study in Europe that showcased how this climate crisis, transition, has created mental health and health problems among farming communities. And there is a growing anxiety about how these people are pulling off after great disasters. Let's think about what happened the last 3-4 years in Greece, how many disasters, especially Thessaly, has suffered. These are real people. We have beneficiaries there. I'm thinking of them, and I'm quite uncomfortable when I think about what happened to them. People that we have supported through the years, they have been destroyed and destroyed again, and they are still resilient and staying there. But for how many years? And how has this affected their livelihood, their lives, their personal lives, their everyday routines? So this is something to think about, and this has become a major issue. I hope we can somehow find a way that we can meaningfully support those communities, because they're, doing something that we owe them respect for that. So, last round of questions, and I would like to go down to the field and invite you to share some real examples from your everyday work that can showcase what we can do to lead this transition towards a more optimistic, more assertive future. So, Vasilis, some takeouts from your work.
Yeah, back in my days when I was younger, I was in photography, so I really believe in the power of images sometimes. So that's why I want to share this photo with you. I think it's very striking, but there's a story behind it. This is from a project we have about table olives production in the center of Greece, and we see on the bright side with the force, you can see the farm of...
It's not an AI image.
No, it's not an AI image, not even manipulated by, I don't know, Adobe, whatever. So you see actually the farm, the green one, of a lady, Katerina, that she's actually an entrepreneur. She left the advertisement sector back in Athens. She went back to her family business. She's also a processing retailer. Yes. She's also a broker, very active in her area. You can see also some sub-pictures of practices she's applying within her farm, within the project. I mean, we talk about simple things like cover crops, some clay minerals to spray the olive tree so it's not stressed by heat or even for pest control. Some green infrastructure, as we call it, to support biodiversity. And here there is a comment. I mean, it was surprisingly how much all this low-tech, low-technology practices can have a very direct impact. And there is some numbers here. I mean, we found out that if we increase, for example, the soil organic matter by 1 or 2%, we can have a reduction. I mean, we can sequestrate almost 50% of the carbon.
How much?
50%.
50%.
If the global land used for agriculture had increased its soil organic matter by 1 or 2%, we had solved half of the problem. So there is more about the story, that the other part is like a corporate-driven farm managed by having just some employees, workers, that lots of inputs, expensive ones, compacted soil, impacts. So, all right, it's not everything black and white, of course. This lady is also very stressed because she does not have support by the state. Conditions in the market are difficult. I mean, there's nothing like flowers and daisies, yes. So these people need support. This is what we do. I mean, this is what we try to do. I mean, to be there constant should be a horizontal way of working with them. We're not the gods transmitting vertically down to them all our knowledge. I mean, we work with them. We try to have all this transfer of knowledge between us, researcher and farmer, but also between farmers. So she works like a lighthouse for her area. So this is very important. I mean, I think this is the most important message I could share with you, besides talking about more numbers and figures or whatever.
I think she should be turning her farm into a demonstration farm or a living learning lab for the rest of the area. I think this farmer-to-farmer learning model is actually the future for at least our area in the European Union. Great. Ellen, coming over to you. You have studied different diets from all over the world and ended up with some kind of guidelines or thoughts, if I may say so, on how each region could potentially adapt their diets towards a more sustainable, healthy, for the planet and for human beings model. Could you share a couple of examples that are, let's say, might sound a bit peculiar for us, because Mediterranean diet is fully aligned with the flexitarian model, but what about other diets in the world?
Yeah, so we have assessed both current diets towards or against the planetary health diet. And we see that even in the Mediterranean countries, we are currently far away from the healthy, a healthy diet, and I guess also the Mediterranean diet. But that's in Europe and in the Mediterranean region and in many, many other countries and regions around the world, we do we don't have healthy diets, in short. We have also then studied more traditional local diets, like the Mediterranean diets or the traditional diets in South America, in Latin America, in Asian populations, in parts of Africa, and we see that almost all over the world, the more like the traditional healthy diets are more aligned also with the scientifically healthy diets. When we were eating more directly from what we produced, living more or producing and eating more in line with the local resources and the natural environment that is surrounding us. So I think, like you said, and we have all said, that the Mediterranean diet is very much aligned with a healthy and also more sustainable diet than most current diets. So I think for the Mediterranean region to aspire to that diet should really be a very strong focus for politicians and for decision makers in this region. And then we see there are obviously also traditional diets that are not particularly in line with the planetary health diet, but in a global scale, there are still space for pockets or smaller populations that are eating not exactly after the planetary health diet. As long as we live, in line with the natural environment and the natural limitations that we have, and which we have spoken to in this session as well.
Yes, and you mentioned the other two, let's say, parameters as well in your first contribution about sustainable production and also decreasing or completely eliminating food waste. So these are also very important in this transition. Great. And to you now, Alkis. Could you please share how a private organization, a financial institution, as in your case, could actually mobilize the entire sector towards a transition that is meaningful towards value-adding models?
Okay, I've got two examples. This is the first. We've got so many challenges to tackle in that part of the economy, but we can't make them all at once. So what Piraeus Bank has decided is to make up a specific department. We call it Center of Excellence, and what effectively we do is that we prioritize the needs of the agri sector. We find out to our interest what is the most beneficial we have to take care of, and then we dive in. Our first choice was to find how we can make value and decrease costs onto the open field vis-à-vis the greenhouses. In Greece, the land that's covered by greenhouses is 0.3%. The greenhouses can produce value in terms of products like 50 to 80 tons per acre, while in the open field is like 8, while the, let's say, the consumption of water is decreases from 300 tons per kilo to almost 5 to 10. You can easily understand that if we go after such a transformation into the market, we can certainly, the farmers themselves, not us, can certainly increase our revenues on a steady flow, which is very important, decrease their expenses and effectively become more profitable. And this is what we have invested so much time into that. So what did we do is that we've taken all parts into the equation and we have sat at a table and discussed among ourselves. So we discussed with all the technical consultants in the greenhouses, with the manufacturers, the insurance companies, because insurance is a very important part of that attempt, with the importers of the machinery, the state, of course, the state which is very much into that, not only in terms of providing subsidies, but transforming the scenery, and certainly the off-takers, because if we increase the produced goods, who's going to be buying them and at what value? Piraeus Bank sat with all of them and we tried to find the best solution into that challenge. And nowadays there is an open program from the state which provides a subsidy for an investment of 300 million euros of greenhouses into the country. us are supporting them in terms of finance, and primarily, as I've said previously, we've got open discussions with the investors, with the farmers, so as to transform themselves and be aware of what they're investing into that.
Fantastic. I think we got a good picture of what are the challenges and how we can work on the field with the people, with the financial institutions, with the researchers, and how all this multidisciplinary collaboration is extremely important and critical for securing the future of the agri-food sector and the Mediterranean diet. So I will now invite you for questions for our panelists. Yes, Tassos. Mr. Tassos Kyriakidis, I think most of us know him. He's a distinguished professor from Yale.
Thank you. Thanks for great presentations. My question, I think the theme yesterday and today, it's how do we communicate these things down to the people who are actually doing the work? We have outputs here, 100+ page report, a plan from a bank, research tools. I know it wasn't supposed to sound that easy. We can tell an animal farmer, you can change to something else. So how much input, actual input, have you received from people in the field? And what is the message that's going back in a simple way that they understand what that means? Because we're all hopeful that this is going to work, but how confident are we?
Yeah, thank you. Let me respond to that. So, I mean, from the Commission, we recognizing that we are a group of researchers, mostly working in our offices, etc. But so we have over the last 6 months, and will continue now to work with different communities or different stakeholder groups. So, for example, farmers and fishers, to translate the science into action. Because that's not our field of expertise. So this is like, okay, this is the scientific foundation. How do we now translate it? And this is where we are asking this room for help, and for other groups, you know, whether it's being the farmers, you know, what do you actually need? You know, we have based on the literature suggesting some actions. Then, for example, like the reskilling, how to support local value chains, or supporting the investments in new tools, etc. But then, so that's for the farmers. But we need their feedback on what they exactly need. And the same with, I mean, with chefs, with restaurants and food service. You know, what do you need? So. Well, yes, this is the scientific evidence for a healthy diet, but how can we make it useful in your restaurant, or in your workplace, whether it's in a school canteen, or it's in a food processing company? So this is what we're asking you and others now, and in the coming months, you know, how can we translate this into action?
Right. Also, I think we had many conversations in many different forums and conferences all this year around. Right. So researchers work with farmers, preferably. I come from a farming family. We have proverbs that we use between researchers for farmers. It's a difficult task talking with farmers. I mean, the proverb about teaching an old dog new tricks, considering that we have an aging population, is a main issue to consider. The other is that we have a very low extension, training levels of farming communities. Let's talk just for Greece or for Europe. 5% in Greece. Just 5% of farmers have received a kind of training with they learn everything from their fathers, maybe from the suppliers of inputs, whatever. So, but what I want to say here is that farmers have a survival instinct. They know, they can see, they can recognize what is good for them. First, it's financial thing, yes? They have to survive. They don't play around. They're not just lifestyle, whatever, that they want to show off something. They have to survive. So when it's, we do it in a proper way, we show them what we're preaching here is the correct thing to do, and it will have a benefit in many different ways. This is the correct path to follow. There is much of silent work done by researchers, but also pilot farmers that spread the word. Cover crops, compost. I can tell you many practices that maybe 30 years ago, within the chemical era, synthetic chemical era, it was just words from the past or whatever. Now they begin to recognize. They can see that, understand that their farm should be more resilient to what stress is coming, either economic, financial, or environmental.
Great.
Just a word. The answer is it's not easy. And it does take time. You have to insist. You have to explain. What do we do is that we try to talk into their language. We never wear ties. We are always there. We don't bring them in the office. We discuss on the field. So if you explain and persuade, then sky's the limit. They've got only huge opportunities rather than other companies and enterprises who have reached their top level. And certainly leading by example. So we find the best cases in the country, and we take them from there and we present them in the rest, explain how they've reached their goals and how they can also assimilate them. And the third is that we come in very close coordination with the agri-cooperatives. We've got something like 700-800 agri-coops in the country. I wouldn't say that they've all to their best level, but certainly there are hundreds who can make miracles. So we communicate with them, and they come into contact with our presence with hundreds or 50s of farmers. But again, it's going to be taking time, persistence, and there's going to be future. There's no doubt about that.
And this also creates a unique opportunity to restructure the farming model in Greece. Today, only 53 acres per farm in Greece, the average. And this is 70% lower than the EU average. 86% of all food processing units in Greece have less than 10 employees. This is a matter of size as well. And collaborations is the key word for transitioning. We have to persuade them, we have to reskill them, we have to support them, we have to give them everything that they want, a direction, a clear future, the technology, but we have to collaborate. We have to, all of us, all the research, academia, the banks, the institutions, the local authorities, the farmers, the producers' unions, everyone has to look around them and collaborate. Unless we want to, find another future, another planet, even though I think this would be quite difficult, if not impossible, we should look into a future of collaboration, of partnerships, of synergies, and of co-creation. I think our time's up. So thank you very much. That has been an amazing discussion. You have contributed greatly to my personal understanding as well. So looking forward to seeing you outside. Thank you.